Hello, everybody. This is An. I am from Indie Clips, and I am here today with Ciao. Ciao, is that the way that I pronounce your name? Tell me if it's in another way.
Yeah, it's ciao, as in hi in Italian. So you nailed it.
Perfect, perfect. So you are based in LA,
hmm
and can you tell us a little bit more about yourself as a filmmaker?
Yeah, for sure. So I mainly dabble into producing. I do both creative producing and line producing, which is amazing in the world of shorts when you don't have that many people to be on the production team to begin with. So I started out with documentary making actually around 2 or 3 years ago. I was working at a video brand in China where we're doing a lot of like short form documentaries that are kind of similar to the Vox style. And from there, I obviously learned a lot of organization skill, multitasking skill, also kind of got my first taste of producing. And I really enjoyed it, but also I realized that I'm so fascinated with like stories and the possibilities of like fiction. So I was also already doing a lot of development work, like a lot of script reading on the side for a lot of production companies. So when I came back to LA to like finish school post-pandemic, I was thinking like, why don't I try out narrative producing a little bit? So from there, like I did around 5 or 6 projects in the past year, and here we are.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So I saw you have a website that I am going to invite everyone to go check out, and the link will be in the description, of course. And on your website, I see multiple short films, and I was thinking, can you tell us a bit more about the story of this life?
Yeah, for sure. So the Start of the Life is, I call it my first baby, my first narrative short that I did when I came back to LA. So it's a family drama about this Chinese father who's like in his 50s, 60s, who's never been abroad before. And he had to fly to America to pick up the remains of his son who had died of COVID-19. And because he doesn't speak English, he has to hire a translator who happens to be this study abroad girl in college. And as the two complete strangers like embark on kind of a road trip together, they get to form a bond, and also we get to see the process of grieving over the death of a young family member.
Really, really interesting. So, is this film complete? Is it out yet?
Yeah, it's already in its festival circuit. It got a couple of selections here and there. We actually just got a notification from Cannes Short Film Corner yesterday.
Amazing.
So it's still going, it's still running. We'll see where it's going to be. And hopefully it'll be able to be out in a public platform at some point so everyone will be able to see it.
Yeah, congratulations on that. So you filmed it in the US.
Yeah.
And how can you tell us a bit more about the actual making of this film? I suppose it was a full independent production.
Yeah, it was fully independent, but the financing is kind of interesting. We started out with just me and the writer director Alex, who was also my roommate at the time.
Mhm.
So it was inspired by a social media post that was circulating in China maybe around 2 years ago, like at the height of the pandemic. There was a post about a father who's looking to hire a local translator because his son just died because of COVID-19. We're talking about like maybe spring of 2020 or something like that. And so he's looking to fly to Heathrow the next day to pick up the ashes. And he's like trying to find a driver who speaks Mandarin who can pick him up at the airport. So it was like a very heartbreaking news. And I remember um, like me reading the news, and I was like turning to Alex. I was like, "Did you see this?" And she's like, "Yeah, like it's the most frustrating thing you can ever be seeing in a time and age like that." And also, we were both study abroad students, so it's kind of like you understand both sides of things, and having to like put yourself like trying to understand what that could possibly mean to a parent. It's just extremely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then we also had heard news of like close family friends or people like that who had experienced tragedies like that at the early ages of the pandemic. So Alex reached out to me like when we were literally in the same room. She reached out
Yeah.
to me being like, hey, I wrote the first draft of this story, like do you want to check it out? So I read the script. It was very different from where it is right now. We ended up going through 12 different drafts, but I was like, this is a story we had to tell because like this is an experience that was very specific to us and we like understood it very well and we felt like this is the period that like nobody should be forgetting about. So I was on board as the producer, and Alex herself was a producer to begin with as well. So she was way more experienced than I was, which is really helpful throughout the process. And then we also have another co-producer who's like also from within our friend circle, who's like really, really sweet and nice. And we kind of all brought on board different skill sets. And we quickly put together the team. It was like half Mandarin speakers versus half not, which makes it a very interesting dynamics on set. And the most difficult part was definitely just to be filming while we were still in pandemic because the principal photography took place last spring. So that was like when Omicron started to hit. So there were a lot of things that we were doing just because of the pandemic, and we had a lot of COVID scares during the prep phase, but luckily like nothing happened. We never had to change our schedule for anything.
Lucky.
And when it comes to financing, obviously we did the fundraising just because that was like the easiest way to gain traction, and we did it in a Mandarin platform because again it was like a story that's entirely made in Mandarin and it's like meant to be obviously targeting a domestic audience for us. And then very luckily I got connected through a friend who's actually not in the industry to a Bay Area based arts and humanities organization called 7 p.m. Literary Salon. And they just started trying to finance short films the year before because they were only like organizing film related events, and then they started having more fundings and deciding to put them into good work by supporting indie filmmakers. And they saw our post online and reached out to us. So they ended up actually partially financing the story just because they like it so much as well. So that was a huge relief to us just because the story of this life isn't exactly the cheapest thing to make from the start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, of course. It's always good to get financing, especially by productions who support short films and short filmmaking. That's amazing. And it also means that your campaign was probably successful in the way that you handled the campaign on the Mandarin website, but maybe on social media too, or so good job on that.
Thank you.
Amazing. So, how many days of shooting?
It was 6 days. We did it, yeah, we did it in 6 consecutive days. So that was fun.
Oh, wow, yeah, that's a busy week.
Yeah, it was also a school week, so it was a lot of navigating different crew because we have like half the crew members who are still in school.
Oh,
It was basically a pretty professional team. I don't think it was like anyone's first ever project, and everyone was like treating it as something that we were doing professionally instead of like finishing a class assignment, which it wasn't.
yeah, I
Yep.
see.
So in that sense, we were very lucky. It was a very smooth shoot, and I feel like we had a really good vibe within the team itself. Like I really had nothing to complain when I was on set, so that was amazing from my aspect.
Oh, we love that. A set that goes well with good experience. What if you look back on the whole project of the story of this life, um, I'm wondering first, what's your best memory on set, and also what is your biggest challenge? Something that was the most difficult aspect of it.
Oof. Um, the best moment on set. I'm trying to think. It was a I don't know if this was like the best moment, but it was like the most memorable moment. But, so we were shooting on I think it's on the third day or the fourth day, we were shooting exterior. We were filming at a parking lot in LA, and it was super, super windy at the time. Like, and then we were like in an outdoor. It's kind of like a rooftop parking lot, so you can feel the wind coming in. I was working that day. I was like working at a production company during the day, and that was the only day where I like couldn't spend the entire day doing the shoot. So I had to like call an Uber the moment it hit 6 p.m. and I was like, I need to make it to the rest of the evening. So I arrived on set, and we were shooting the most emotional scene at the climax when the father like goes into the car that his son had left behind and like essentially slept there and like trying to process what it means now that his son is gone. So it's a scene that has no dialogues. Yeah,
Yeah.
thinking back on that, our production style was there, but I was like, why are you doing this little sound? But so it was like a scene with himself and the car, and we had like the rest of the crew, like everyone was like holding on to their jacket to life because it was so cold outside.
Mhm.
And then I got there leftover boba for everyone because there's a friend coming over. And then it was like the moment when that I really, really enjoyed, because that was the point when I actually got to witness the professionalism of the actor himself. Because I think up until that point, we didn't really get to bond that well. But then, like, that was the evening when I saw that his performance is so great, and he came out and he like wasn't complaining at all. And I was like in his position, I was like, you were wearing a shirt on your own, and like the
Mm.
wind is so strong, it's past sunset, it is so black outside, like everybody was kind of freezing to death, partially speaking. And like we had to bring like 4 different blankets, so everyone kind of was wearing a blanket. And looking back on the behind the scene photos, it was like everyone looks like a little potato on screen because everyone is like hold on to their dear life. And then the actor wasn't complaining at all.
Wow.
Like every single time the take was done, I was like, do you need hot coffee? Like, can we do a coffee run for you? Like,
Mm.
can you put on this blanket? Do you want to go into your car and turn the heater on? I was like asking all these questions. I was like, what can I do for you? Because you truly look like amazing performance. But I'm like, are you okay?
Oh
And
my
he's like, all
gosh.
good. He's like, all good, all good. Like I got this. Like this is what it's about. And like now I got to experience it more because I'm like actually feeling for it. And he's like,
Yeah, true. Method
amazing.
acting.
I'm like, exactly. And that was the moment when I think back on it, I was like, wow, it's such a night.
Yeah. Wow. Oh yeah, no, I mean that's what it is too. Like on shoots, exterior shoots can become so challenging when weather comes in, and it's a really hard thing to try and anticipate, right? You know that maybe it's not going to be a super sunny day, but you never know how it's going to feel on set. So yeah, that's always such a challenge, such a challenge. But do you have any other like big challenge that maybe you face during production or on set that you want to talk about?
I feel like I guess on one hand it is mm, it was the pre-production process because we actually had a lot of changes to the existing script.
Mm-hmm.
So the end product that everyone's gonna be seeing, it's like focusing a lot on the father because it is about his grieving process, and to us, like that's the psychology that's more interesting to observe, just because the translator, whose name is Janice, is like obviously closer to us. Like her personality is like drawn from a lot of different study abroad students that we know.
Mm-hmm.
So to us, like the father is the arc that we're trying to explore more because like it's more thematically tied into the message that we're trying to deliver. But then it was a really heartbreaking draft when we were trying to cut out Janice, like completely cut out her storyline and basically deprive her of the identity as a co-lead and
Yeah.
have to demote her to a supporting character,
Mm-hmm.
because we actually had a lot of backstories for her about like how she came to the place where she is and like what is her relationship with her parents, because like that was the parallel relationship that we were trying to draw between a father and a daughter. And then we had to cut it out because we realized that there simply was not enough screen time to explore both of them, and we don't want the story to be pulled into two different directions. So we had to like instead just pivot to the father storyline a lot, and then we were trying to like put ourselves in his shoes and be like, so what's his story? Like we were trying to build an entire lifetime for him, and we like were calling our fathers individually, being like, hey, say if you get put into this fictional scenario, do you think you're gonna cry, or do you think you're gonna be lighting up a cigarette? Like how would your reaction be? And we were like trying really hard brainstorming and like building up his storyline as we go. So it was kind of like, in the end, we will never know if that's like the real experience, but we were like trying to understand and empathize and hopefully get something right about it. But to me, it was just a sad thing because I really absolutely am in love with Janice as a character, but I was like, we have to let you go because that's how stories work. And then realistically, a huge challenge that we experienced was actually also related to the same exterior shot. It was like rewind to 12 hours before. So we finished shooting maybe around, I want to say 12 or 1 a.m. the night before. Like it was an evening shoot the night before as well. And then we had to park 5 different cars to the parking lot the night before. Like the process was that we're gonna finish shooting. The shooting location on Tuesday was very close to where we're gonna be, the parking lot that we're gonna be shooting on Wednesday. So I was like, let's call up 5 different crew members and let's park the cars in the spots that we want. So the next day we can just come in and like shoot in those exact location. And we got there realizing that the parking lot is actually closed past 2 a.m. or something, so nobody can get in anymore. And we got the misinformation from the person that was like providing us with the location in the first place. So we kind of like got screwed the very last minute, like the night before, realizing that we won't be able to come in. And then Alex and I were like, what can we do? And the decision we came up with is let's wake up in 3 hours because the parking lot opens again at 5 a.m. So we were like, let's come here at 5 a.m. and talk to the parking lot person and reserve all the spots. So we like put up the alarm. So it was like 3 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep. The moment it hit 5, I woke up, I was like, Alex, let's go. And we went to the parking lot trying to find the spots and then like trying to find the person. And I was like so sleepy. I was like, where are the slots? Like I couldn't find our car anymore. Yada, yada, yada. Had this whole chaotic period where I was like, I'm not awake. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. But eventually we got what we need. So that was great. But it was such an experience, like waking up at 5 a.m. trying to find your car in the lot.
Oh my God, that sounds really hard. Oh, but that's so good that you made it in the end. That's it's all about the result.
Yeah, that was a fun night.
Oh, wow. And I also thought it was really interesting what you were saying about making choices when writing the script. You girls went through 12 drafts and you had to decide to keep going in a certain way, which also means giving up on certain aspects of your story. And I think that's really interesting. You seem to also have made quite a lot of research on your character. to write him in the right way, or maybe as close as you could. And that sounds really good. Is there any advice that you would give? You probably are more on the production side, right? You have a lot of experience in film production and maybe pre-production. Is there any advice that you would give to beginning filmmakers who are maybe working on their first projects?
I will say the most important thing to me is always to understand your story, like understand what is the thing that you're trying to say with the story. Because I'm like working full-time at a production company now, so I read incoming submissions on the feature side of things all the time, and I still get a lot of scripts from friends either looking for creative notes or like asking if I want to take on a side project from time to time. And to me, whenever I'm like reading a new script, sometimes the most difficult note for me to give is, so what's the story about? And I almost feel bad when I was like reading 20 pages or 120 pages, realizing that I don't understand like why the story is being written in the first place. And I guess like that's where a director's statement becomes super helpful, because I was like, that's an anchor point that you can give to yourself. So whenever you're like trapped or you don't understand what the story is about, go back to your writer's statement, go back to your director's statement, and think about like what was the thing that got you started in the first place. And especially, I guess, from a producing perspective and having to deal with money all the time, I was constantly thinking about like, is this the best story to tell? Like, is this a story that's worth telling and like spending all of your life savings on? And like, how do you justify that this thing needs to exist out there? So I feel like being able to understand why you were doing a thing, why you were writing a specific story, was the most important thing that any writer director should be holding on to. And then beyond that, like I feel like another pressure skill set to have is to be simultaneously assertive and collaborative. Because I was like, understanding a story is about being able to stand on your own ground, understanding what you were starting out for, versus being collaborative is about being open to suggestions from people who might be more experienced than you in certain ways. I feel like for a lot of writer directors who are starting out, a lot of the times their producers, their DPs, or like their PDs, other department heads might actually have more experience, and they do come in with a perspective that is valuable because that's why they were in that position in the first place. So I feel like it obviously is important to protect your story and protect your vision, but it's also important to have conversations with other crew members and understand where they might be coming from. And at the end of the day, I believe the goal of any indie films is to connect with the audience. So the crew members are the first round of the audience that you're getting. So I feel like being able to reach them and being able to understand like valuable tips when they come in is like another process that everyone is learning as they're starting out.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, and it's very interesting to hear your point of view as a person who works in production and obviously reads a lot of scripts. So I think that's really interesting what you're saying about finding the core of the story and what it's actually about, and why are we going to spend so much time on this? Why so much money and so much effort? And I think it's a harsh truth, but it is definitely true. um, well, that's about all the questions I have, but I always like to know more about every director's future projects. So, is there any ongoing project that you have, or future projects in your mind that you'd like to talk about? We'd love to know.
I have a couple of shorts still hidden in my inbox that I gotta get to today. So we'll see if anything interesting pops up from there. But I'm not working on anything actively in pre-production right now, but I am still working with Alex on some of her feature projects, and we'll see if any of them will be able to have the potential to go out there. But I guess an interesting honorable mention that we can be getting at is a project called A Border Crossed. It's not an available script, but like it's out there on Coverfly if you want to look it up. It's the story about, it's a set in 1989 Hong Kong, I believe, about a girl, a woman from mainland China who's like trying to get a baby without getting married. So I'll just leave it there. It's
Very
very
interesting.
interesting because I was like, after doing the story together, after talking about death, now we're talking about birth together. So it was very meta for the both of us. But it's a very interesting period piece, very interesting drama. We don't know if it'll ever be able to get made just because all the set pieces, all the things that we're doing in the script make it very not producible in reality. But it's also just such a great story and of its own, and I really enjoy working with her, like crafting all the drafts together, because there were so many little threads that we're trying to embed into the script that it has more complexity and more rich in texture that a short story may never be able to get into. So it's a really interesting draft to be creative producing on, but hopefully we'll be able to turn it into reality one day.
That's amazing. It sounds like a really great passion project that you have here, and hopefully you'll get it made. Thank you so much for this interview, Xiao, and I'm going to invite our watchers to go check out your work on your website. And I just want to say congrats on that, and definitely keep in touch on your future projects. Would love to see them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.